Commission on Thursday, March 3rd of 2022. May I have a call meeting to order? May I have a roll call, please?
John Brown. Here. Scott West.
Here.
Leon Davis. Here. Craig Bowman. Dave Randolph. Here. Jeffrey Byer.
Here.
Chairman.
Here. Since we have a pretty big agenda tonight with a lot of things going on, there are some guidelines for public hearings since the audience is pretty much full. So I just want to remind people of what our rules are going to be and how this is going to go. At first, I'm going to turn it over to Marseille shortly, and she's going to introduce the planning, the UDO, and we're going to introduce the applicant because they are via satellite. After we get through that part of it, I'm going to open it up to the public, and everyone that wants to speak needs to sign a piece of paper in the back, because in shortly time it's going to get picked up, and then we will be using the sign-in sheet to read who gets to speak and coming forward. So you'll get called forward to speak if you sign the sign-in sheet. The questions that you have should be directed to the Planning Commission. You have a 3-minute limit on speaking time, and we will keep track of that, and we will cut you off at the 3-minute time period. There's no sharing of the minutes, so if you use less than that, then the next person does not get more. The public comment is also limited to the agenda item as it's presented on the agenda. But then after we've done with the public comments, the floor will be closed, and then the applicant will respond, and we'll move forward from that point, and then we'll make a call for a motion. Okay, with that being said, I'll turn it over to Marseille.
Madam Chairman, the tonight's first item on the agenda is the Unified Development Ordinance, and this is an item that does not require a recommendation or action on part of the Planning Commission. That was done in December. Tonight is to discuss what changes staff has made and to take feedback from the public. And the item will then go to City Council for approval sometime in April. There are 2 people online. I believe Jackie has joined us already, and I'm not sure about John, but John is the principal and co-founder of Halcyon Levine. Halcyon Levine was hired in 2019. He's established as one of the nation's top urban planning professionals with a reputation as a leader in urban planning, community outreach. John has directed, managed, and assisted with a whole range of planning assignments, including comprehensive plans, corridor plans, downtown plans, neighborhood plans, master plans, and more. He received a bachelor's degree in environmental science from the University of Michigan and a master's degree in environmental and urban planning from Arizona State University. Prior to co-founding Halcyon Levine, John was a principal and director of urban planning for URS Corporation, where he oversaw and directed the firm's urban planning and community development projects, often coordinating on assignments throughout the country. John has been a featured speaker at national, regional, state, and local events and conferences for issues related to urban planning, zoning, transportation, context-sensitive design, and environmental issues, and is recognized as one of the top community facilitators in the region. John has received several professional planning awards and distinctions, including several awards from the Illinois chapter of the American Planning Association and the DePaul University Chaddock Institute Development Award. John has also been inducted into the Lambda Alpha International, an international honorary fraternity for professional excellence in the field of land economics. The other representative online is Jackie Wells, and I will say John was participated in the open house, the first one we had in February, and Jackie was also present, and then the second one, it was Jackie and myself. The first, let's see here. John and Jackie were both present on the February 9th open house, and then on February 16th, it was myself and Jackie. So Jackie is a project manager at Halcyon Levine, where she is primarily focused on working with communities to implement plans through authoring zoning, sign, and subdivision ordinances that align with plan goals and are user-friendly and legally defensible. In addition to zoning, Jackie has been involved in projects ranging from strategic and comprehensive plans to downtown and corridor studies. Jackie received her bachelor's degree in architectural studies and master's degree in urban planning from the University of Kansas. And for the record, Jackie is from Lawrence, Kansas, so she is someone close to us, not far away in her mindset and how she was raised and how she thinks. This is not someone who's local to Chicago. She's local to Kansas. While in school, her passion for community engagement was ignited, leading her to her work of a research grant to further study the geospatial impacts of public engagement preferences. Prior to joining House of the Bean, Jackie was the Housing and Development Planning Specialist for a community of approximately 45,000 people. There, she developed, implemented, and monitored the city's 5-year consolidated plan and annual plans. She applied for, received, and administered local, state, and federal grant funding. Acting as a liaison between the city and local community groups, she spearheaded the city's targeted efforts in 2 historically disadvantaged neighborhoods and planned for and facilitated community engagement campaigns and events. Through these responsibilities, she gained valuable experience in program and policy development, engaging community groups, and supporting the establishment of new neighborhood associations. Jackie uses her experience in local government to develop data-driven solutions that manage the needs of elected and appointed officials, department heads, nonprofit partners, and residents of the community. So I'd like to thank them for being present this evening. And at this time, Madam Chair, I will return the floor to you and you can start the public comment session.
Okay, so I have a list of people in front of me and I will call you up. Remember, you have a 3-minute time period to give us your comments on this particular item. The first person I have is Chris Hobson. Chris, do you wish to speak on this agenda item?
Hi. My name is Chris Hobson. I've lived in Jenks since 1997 with my wife. We live at the end of Beaver Street. I would normally open with a few jokes to lighten this up, but time's crucial here, so I'll go on. I'm going to start with a scripture that comes to my mind, Ephesians 6:12. It says that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and darkness and dark places. And I have to remember that when I think about these issues. You folks are just people. But that said, as long as I've lived here in Jenks, I've talked to people, my neighbors and friends and relatives, and I've gotten story after story of how the city has either taken properties or devalued properties or made people move, condemned areas and this and that. And it's not just you folks, because I've been here for 25 years and I've seen this over and over and over and over and over again. It's been suggested that the current mayor is on the staff because he faced.
Sir,
Yes, ma'am.
may I ask you to stay on the agenda item, please?
Sure. I question the motives and practices of this council because of citing the recent property disputes and subsequent payoffs. I question that if you're going to take properties and you've already got properties in town that you've invested in, why not finish those projects before you start new projects in our area? I apologize for not being a little more organized about this. I also want to know, my last question is, why would you spend 10 minutes giving us a bio on the people who did the project? Time is crucial here. One other thing comes to mind is I've heard that it's been suggested that there's not been efficiency projections made on traffic and what the economic impact on this development is going to be, how it's affecting taxes in the area as well as property values and insurance. That's my concerns. Thank you.
Kevin Bodenham, Dimmer.
Good evening. Kevin Bowden here for 219 East Duncan, also at property 203 Steve. I have some written comments I'll give to Marseille. She's used to getting my written comments. One of which left her by passing. One thing I do want to say is I've read through the revised plan. I appreciate the changes that we made to the school code in place at San Coalition. Hope that the entire planning commission will approve this document as is written. Put those areas back into the downtown overlay. So thankfully, Marseille has been with the community, has been very good. Appreciate her reaching out and getting impact the feelings and input from the residents of San Coalition. The only other comment I had is the document itself needs to be corrected. Instead of 2021, it's 2022. So they may not want to adopt it as a 2021 document. The other piece there is really in section 16.5.12 H1. Really concerns at-home businesses. This was brought up in some of the meetings that were open to the community. And it says that all home-based businesses shall be required to have a conditional use permit, change to conditional. I don't think I'm not sure if the full extent of what that really means has been taken into account. The definition of a business is quite expansive. It covers anybody who does anything at home to make money. So in today's world of e-commerce, internet-based businesses, anyone who has a podcast out of their dining room, anyone who sells Amway out of their house, anyone who is a gig employer in the new internet commerce, meaning all I do is I have a computer. My house looks just like everything else. I've got a computer that I work at it. And I'm not an employee, I'm my own businessman. Those people will have to come to the planning commission to ask permission to run their business out of their house in the city of Jenks. I would hope that the consultant we hired would have recognized this and realized that e-commerce and e-business is the future. And if you're wanting to bring new young professionals into the city of Jenks, having them come before the planning committee to get a permit to run their business at their computer, sitting in their office or the bedroom, is not an efficient use of anybody's time. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Andrew, would you like me to consent?
Sure.
A point of order on that. I apologize. The definitions should have already better described the difference, and that has been noted, and it will be reflected in the definitions. And a C represents a conditional use permit, which just means if you did have a wig business, and I do see clients, then if I meet all of this criteria, you just submit an application to the city, and if I met all the criteria, it doesn't go any further. You just get your permit and you move on. You don't actually come to the planning commission.
Great, good to know. Angie Steptuna? To pass? Dana Williams?
My name is Dana Williams. I have a whole family with me here tonight. We inherited or were deeded Indian land, Creek Indian land, back in 1903. We have lived on that land since that time. We have been farmers and cattle ranchers, and our land until this time has been zoned agriculture. Your land use plan has taken that land and is changing it to parks and open space. Once you change it to our parks and open space, we will lose our ability to raise cattle, whether it be goats or chickens, rabbits. It will also stop our forestry program. And we just happen to live on that hill. The old architectural or our agricultural rules or zoning said that you could have one home structure on each lot, which we do. If you change it to parks and open space, what happens to our houses? Where do we go? What are you doing? Are you kicking me out? I would like to know if this passes in April, if my property and my family's property, like I said, it was deeded to a 4-year-old man named Raleigh, or 4-year-old boy named Raleigh Maxwell in 1900. We've had it that long. And you're just gonna take it from us because you think that this little corner of land on the east side of 111th Street by the river would make more money as a park and open space than it would the tax dollars that we provide this city. Have you thought about taking people's homes away? Did anybody drive down 111th? We know that there's a lot of trees on that hill. Did anybody drive down there and see, do people really live there? Or are you going off of incog or something else? I want to know. Will I have a place to live in May? Can anybody answer that tonight?
Are you finished with your
I'm
comments?
finished.
Okay, Marcy?
I believe there's some confusion. Did you reach out to me via email?
No, I did not.
Okay, someone in that area did. Maybe a family member, I'm not sure. The parks and open space, what she's referring to is the actual land use map. And primarily agricultural parcels are identified as parks and open space, and they are not dedicated for development. So it's a policy guide, and it doesn't impact your land, and your land is not being rezoned, and it's technically not even on the agenda, because we're talking about the adoption of the Unified Development Ordinance, not the comprehensive plan. So it has nothing to do with your property.
Give you something to think about while we're here.
Thank you.
Marcy,
Yeah.
could you address how property with its current use is grandfathered in, even if this UDO is adopted?
You want me to address it now? Or would you
Well,
like to go?
maybe, I mean, there seems to
Sure.
be some confusion.
Based on Mr. Hobson's first comments and Ms. Williams' comments, there is perhaps some misunderstanding or improper communication, and I don't think it's come from the city. I think maybe they're getting information somewhere else. In the case of an agricultural property, nothing changes. Actually, in any property, nothing changes until you change your property, except in this case regarding the downtown core and the riverfront. So those two, as far as residential properties go, I heard the word tonight taken, devalued, moved, and condemned. There is no plan by the city. Your property, if it's a use by right now, and it became a non-conforming use, you can still continue it. Nothing changes. You can still continue doing what you're doing. If you have a residential property, no one's coming to take your property. There is no plan to take your property. If you have a commercial property, there's no plan to take your property. Nobody at the city is trying to take your property. Zoning is part of land use, and it's a very technical part. And we've been doing zoning since the 1900s, and 1972 is when it came to Oklahoma. And grandfathered uses can continue in perpetuity. You cannot expand a non-conforming use. So if I have a 1,200 square foot structure today, and I operate it as a wig shop, and then the new zoning takes place and wig shops are no longer allowed, I can still continue my wig shop forever. I just can't make it a 2,400 square foot wig shop unless I go through a different process of zoning. And there are other tools that can accommodate those changes, but that's basic. Does that explain it?
No.
Okay, then we're gonna defer questions until the end. We'll let Houston Levine talk, and we'll move on.
Vicki Besser? Yes. Kevin Holland?
My name's Kevin Holland. My address is 8209 South New Haven in Tulsa. My family owns multiple homes here in town. They own property on East Beaker Street. And I think those homes will be affected, but I would personally like to see an economic study to see what the impact is going to be. Because if you reduce the use of, get the number of uses on property, you're going to affect the value of it. And that will apply to all the surrounding properties when they do appraisals and stuff like that. So you reduce the value of everybody's property within a general area. And it's just, I think it's an overreach by the city. The system that you have been using is fine. It seems like this plan is built for the developers. It's not built for residents. It's a play for the developers, of what I can tell. And I have seen the city attempt to take property, so I've experienced it personally. But I know that you say it doesn't happen, but it does happen. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Janet Harris.
I think.
You can adjust that, like.
I think maybe I'm at the wrong meeting because I'm supposed to be at a meeting about the 1 acre property across from Moon's. That's later.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to pass out to you. My neighbor wanted to pass out a statement that she wanted to say but couldn't be here, so I'll pass that out now. And then, so.
Is that related to this agenda item? Oh, okay.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Julie Spears.
I wasn't planning on doing this, but my husband is a resident of this town for 50 years. And I've met some great people as I've lived here, so I've been married here 15. I think the biggest thing that's going on is the communication. I think that's where a lot of people have felt like it's broke down between the city and the residents. It's unfortunate. I mean, I know the water bill, it came out in 2019 in July, and we had a thing called a pandemic come around. So everybody was kind of concerned about coming out, being out, trying to address other people. They were just thinking of, just general concerns of survival and seeing what was going on with the media. I think that's kind of this whole thing kind of went to the wayside, and the fact that they didn't know really what was going on. And I think they've obviously a lot of people are here because they now are seeing what's going on. And so I think as long as you can be able to listen and see what they have to say, I think it'll be a lot better, because I think people are just coming off of a heightened emotional time with this whole thing in our environment we call life. And so I just hope that you take at least consideration of some of these people here and their concerns, because I don't know as much as they do. They're usually their lifetime residents of this city, and they love it. So that's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Rhonda Bender.
Rhonda Bender, 6839 East 105th Street. Franklin Roosevelt stated that real estate cannot be lost or stolen, nor can it be carried away. Purchased with common sense, paid for in full, and managed with reasonable care is about the safest investment in the world. Sadly, Franklin's not here today to see that Jenks America is about to vote to rezone people's land and business properties. I spoke here at this very meeting on December 9th. I told this very council that my property was reduced by 50% of its uses. I presented an appraiser and a broker's opinion at that night that showed a devaluation of 50% with this new zone of the RTC zone. So I searched to find any property zone RTC, and I found one. The barren concrete slab with grass growing through the foundation that was to be an outlet mall. And if this is any indication of what's about to come with this new zoning, no, thank you. At the time, the planning committee indicated that January 4th and the 18th would be the final vote to pass the UDO and the rezone respectively. If some of us had not spoken up, this would already be a done deal, and we would not even be having this meeting tonight because it would already be passed. The council would have already passed it. Because you did not include the owners in the process, I do not approve this ordinance development, the unified ordinance development, and I am adamantly opposing any rezoning of anybody's parcel that did not apply with an application to rezone. Additionally, on December 9th meeting, our former city planner stated that he had to look this up to see if this was even legal. He said that it's never been done. He went further to say that this is not a precedent that he believes that the city should set. Well, here you're doing it, you're setting it. So the optics here is that the city's created this overly complicated $350,000 comprehensive plan nearly 2 years ago, and now you've been tasked to push through the UDO. Set a new precedence of partially rezoning hardworking citizens' property, and to make this plan even have a hope. All this without including the feedback from the 145 properties that you are about to rezone and decrease their uses and devaluate their value. It's irresponsible to introduce a plan of this magnitude without an existing conditions report that even though John Housel was on record stating that it exists. We are the studies that are impacting, where are they? The demographics, the impact, the traffic, the air quality, the drainage. Provide that to show that you looked at the health, the safety, and the welfare of the citizens in this town. And if you don't have them, be honest and say you don't have them and go back and include the 145 landowners. Maybe this is a box map to you, but this is my mom's 401k. All right? And this is what my dad left her, and she needs a fair market value to live out her years. Right here.
Time is up.
Do not rezone
Thank you.
people's property.
Chris Hobson. Oh, did you sign in twice? Mark Bender.
Okay, I want the records to indicate that Marseille was looking at me when she used that wig analogy. Coincident? I think not. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to voice my concerns about plan rezoning under the new Unified Development Ordinance. I do have a question for each of the member of the committee. How many of you have read the UDO cover to cover?
How many times?
Perfect. So if you have read it, and clearly you understand the impact it will have on the value of business and property owners, as well as the possible financial hardship this might cause, demonstrated by some of the speeches tonight. If you haven't read it, I'm not sure how you could, in good conscience, pass this through. I'm sure that if I had a conversation with each of you, which I welcome, outside of this meeting, of course, that each of you would most likely agree that in the last 2 years, we've had a lot of government overreach. We've had a lot of misinformation provided to us in our lives, and we've had mandated compliance that few agree with. Citizens like to be well informed and heard, not mandated. They like to be part of the decision and where they live, where they work, and have contributed economically to the bottom line success of a governing body in the form of both personal and business taxes. When you couple this with the fact that the impact of business and landowners were not included in the visioning, planning, and development of a plan that will impact each of them financially, well, that feels like it's dealing underhanded to all of it to me. And it will have consequences, both intentional and unintentional. All we're asking for each of you to do the right thing. In my opinion, what's that? Well, that's to allow businesses and landowners to opt in or to opt out of the rezoning. This would allow a fair and impartial approach in support of the UDO. If this plan provided a benefit to all impacted stakeholders, which is the city, the residents, the business, and landowners, it could be a great plan.
If this plan truly provides the benefits that the city planner and Housel Levine have been touting, then those businesses and landowners that you allow to opt out might see the benefit someday and come back in support of the UDO under their free will, not a mandate from the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Roop?
My name is Sam Roop, and I live at 10533 South 71st East Avenue in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I would like to briefly give you my municipal experience. I have been very honored to be elected 5 times to the City Council of Tulsa, which I represented 60,000 people in East Tulsa for over 10 years. I also had the honor of being the Chief Administrative Officer of the entire city of Tulsa under Mayor Bill LaFortune. That is my municipal experience. I'm here this evening to tell you that I don't know of any city or municipality in Oklahoma who have mandated changing of zoning as what you are about to do. Usually it is initiated from the people who own the property. I'm here in opposition to you mandating the rezoning. It would be much better if you simply added the new zoning and allowed each of the property owners, whether they're the existing property owners or the new developers who come in, to be allowed freely to make that decision on their own and come to you and request the new zone. You haven't done any economic impact on what's going to happen to the business owners in your city. I have talked to a great number of the business owners in your city, and they have quickly done their own economic impact study or judgment of what this is going to do to their properties. It's true that you are grandfathering them and that they can continue their business. That is not the problem. The problem is when they get ready to sell their property, that the uses go down from what they are today to less than 50% of what they will be under the new zoning. That devalues the value of their property when they want to retire or move on. If the UDO and the new zoning is so good for the new developers, it would be better that you allow them to do this voluntarily on their own. I'm simply asking that instead of mandating this, you allow it to be a voluntary request directly from either the developers or the current property owners. Have you all read what is in this? I mean, this is not something you should be doing, my experience. Now, I do not have any property here in Jenks. I'm probably the closest thing to an objective observer that you're going to get with a lot of experience in municipal government. I'm telling you, this is not the correct way to go about this. The correct way to go about it is to allow them to voluntarily change the zoning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Stephen Gray?
Madam Chairman and Commissioners, you made me think of an old joke I heard years ago that the human mind can only absorb what the bottom can withstand. And I know that when you have to sit through meetings like this, at times it can be very tedious. And I know that you all are just doing this voluntarily, so you're sacrificing time from your families and from your profession to be here. But I want to focus on something with regard to the proposed UDO, and that is sales taxes. I pulled up the latest sales tax prepared by your CPA. I believe it was done as of June 30th, 2020. I have not been able to find the 2021. But you had a 3% growth in your sales tax. Well, let's be perfectly honest. The lifeblood of a municipality is its sales tax. and it's excise tax. Now, you did have a growth around 13% as of June of 2021, June 30th. But let's factor in inflation into that, 7.5%. So did you really have a 13% growth? My concern as to what you're doing, I affirm some of the cogent arguments Mr. Sam Root made, as well as Mr. Bender. Make this voluntary. Why would you want to pass a zoning tool that is going to encourage people, rather than open a business in Jenks, they'll go to Glenpool, they'll go to Sepulveda, they'll go to Kiefer, they'll go to Tulsa. And I assure you that there are municipalities around Jenks who would be delighted to see this pass because they know that it's going to drive business out of Jenks to other places. I have not seen one economic analysis anywhere, nor have I been provided one, nor have we been provided one, showing the economic analysis of the impact of this proposed zoning planning tool. Zoning is to further the public health, safety, and welfare. I'm not aware of any public health study with regard to the ambient air quality, of how the ambient air quality is going to be impacted or improved by this study. Nothing has been done. I'm not aware of any study that has been done with regard to safety. How is this ordinance going to make the city of Jenks safer from crime? There is none. It is a well thought out ordinance. I have great respect for the men and women who have been preparing the study that cost the city $350,000. But there is perhaps an opportunity to head off something, and that is make it voluntarily. So I would appeal to you for the benefit of your community that is 18 square miles with nearly 27 to 28,000 people. You want to make this a more livable city, and I commend you for that. But please take into account the people who have property and would like this to be a voluntary. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Walton.
My name is Sam Alton. I live at 503 East Aquarium Place in Jenks. Honorable members of the Planning Commission, I'm against this rezoning because it will have a severe negative impact on the value of my property. I own 20 lots on East Aquarium Place. It will hurt everyone in the area financially. I have 4 questions for you. Number 1, has there been a feasibility study on the economic impact that it will have? Number 2, has there been a study for the drainage? You've been around Jenks, you know, we got a drainage problem. Has there been a quality of life study? And have all of you read this code from cover to cover? This ordinance should not be passed. It should be voluntary. And ask yourself, what would you do if I were forcing this on you? Thank you.
Thank you. Keenan.
Chris wanted to put some humor in this, he got off track, so I'll do it.
I'm sorry, would you mind giving us your name and address first, please?
I'm Don Keenan. I live in Glenpool. I own property in the downtown corridor here in Jenks. I'm 100% disabled veteran, retired from the state of Oklahoma, and I'm retired from refinery out here. I like to pay taxes. I'm happy enough to have enough money that I can afford to pay taxes. I appreciate the things my taxes do and I help pay for. I like the police, the fire, EMT, public education, things like that. One of the things I don't like is non-transparency in business dealing or in government. I got a letter last week for the first time notifying me about this. Now, if the VA wants to get a hold of me, they send me a letter. If the IRS wants to get a hold of me, they send me a letter. If the county treasurer wants to get a hold of me, he sends me a letter. Why hasn't Jenks sent me one before this? I have a letter from Mr. Wright. He is the Tulsa County Assessor. It says that I have a valid reason for requesting the reassessment of properties in Jenks if, as I have indicated, zoning changes will decrease from 70-some to 30-some. This will probably allow the decrease in the value of my property and lower my taxes for that property. Should this zoning change take place, should other property owners follow my example, the city of Jenks will receive less income from the properties, as this is a partial taking of value from us and our properties. Thank you.
Anderson?
My name is Tom Anderson. I live on East Comanche here in town. I also own 3 commercial properties on A Street that are affected by the new plant. I also work a full-time job that's 10 or 12 hours a day, and I can't hardly have time to keep up with all the stuff that's changing with this UDO. And I was not informed about any of it as it went along. We went to the original meeting at the aquarium back 3 years ago. Gave our information, listened to all the people, decide what they wanted to have different than Jenks, and never heard another word. Then I see this now. A month ago, we found out about it, that this was all going on, and no one has been notified in our area. And how do I know that? Because I went door to door to find out if anybody had. And no one that I talked to had gotten any notice of zoning change or what the city was doing until the last week or two, when they started getting notices that the mayor told me they couldn't give out. And they got flyers put on their door by you, because I saw you out there doing that. The mayor also told us they couldn't go door to door, and that's why we didn't get informed about this. I think this whole thing is a travesty. You guys are doing stuff that in dark places where no one can see except you guys.
Please stick to the subject, the UDO.
That is the UDO. You guys are doing this UDO behind closed doors with no input from the people that it affects the most. One of the things the mayor said, it's going to hurt a few people. We were on the phone with the mayor. It's going to hurt a few people, but it's going to help the masses. Well, how is the masses going to be helped if we're run out of town? Because we don't have the taxes. I don't know if the taxes go down or up, and neither do you guys. No studies that you had originally said were done have been done. This whole thing is a disaster, and I would impel you and whatever. I want you guys to stop it. It's just ridiculous. If we had been in on the original planning of it, like we should have been, the people that actually live in the area or have businesses in the area, it would have been a lot different. We could have had some input. Maybe things would have been different. And we would have either agreed with it or disagreed with it 2 years ago. But no, we were not even allowed to know anything about it until a few weeks ago. I think this is ridiculous, and you should be ashamed of yourself. I hope you can sleep at that.
Karen Anderson?
I'm Karen Anderson. I live on East Comanche. I have basically 4 properties that were going to be affected, maybe not on Comanche now. Can I just say ditto, because that was my husband. I feel exactly the same way as he does. I have some conversations that happen between me and the mayor that I would love to play for you, but I don't know if you'll let me.
You have 3 minutes, man.
Okay. Okay, let me find it. This
Was
is
he
not,
aware that it was being recorded?
no, you don't have to, you don't have to know.
The only one person has to know.
There was 3 people there,
Three people know.
and you can kick me out after this if you want to.
Now that we're doing it, we do realize that when you make such an exhaustive comment to change, in all likelihood, I don't think the barometer looks 100% of all the people willing to make most people happy, because most people have to, because we're not going to fall out with some people that encounter something that is doing damage to their business. But, you know, when people ask me, hey, does it make sense to have an insurance agent, you know, selling insurance on things, you're going to say, no, it doesn't. And it doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't make sense to have people, you know, sometimes things on Main Street, anywhere in America, no, it doesn't. And if you're hearing it, property, they have plans for that property. And the city doesn't, you know, and for the fact that the city council, they can sit there and say that you don't have to know about it. You should know about it. You should know everything about it. You're going to be the one that's voting and deciding whether it's going to go through or not, and how people feel about it. I say, we know about our plan, and we know about the strategy. We don't know necessarily how it's going to impact the single business in your home. I love you to say, right? And to be honest with you, after doing this for 5 years, I don't think I want to go squat people's fences and put their little traps down. There's a lot of things I would love to do now. I'm pretty sure it's unanimous from the planning commission, and those are the professionals. And the city council has to simply pass.
You know, the rest of it. Thank you. Sorry, we have some here for 3 minutes.
There's an hour and 10 minutes left.
Give it to Kevin.
Andy Cornell.
Candy Parnell. I live at 101 East State Street, the northeast corner of First and A. And I'm just here kind of trying to figure out what's going on. So if this passes, my home will no longer be zoned residential. If and when it sells, it must be a commercial use only. Is that correct?
What was your address?
101 East A Street, the northeast corner of First and A. My house is rather unique. It sits on 3 25 by 75 foot lots, which constitutes what's required for my house. But behind my house is a separate dwelling unit that is grandfathered. It was built in 1950. So there's 2 dwelling units on 1 lot of record. Now, I've had several people offer to buy my house. One gentleman wanted to buy it and live in the house and use the little house in the back as his realty office. A lady wanted to buy it and live in the little house in the back and use my house as an antique shop. Well, my house isn't for sale. I moved from Tulsa 20 years ago to get out of that mess. And I'm going to stay at First and A until they plant me, and then they can sell it. But I'm still concerned about my property. And I want you to know that
I find Jenks to be very unique, especially the north side of A Street and the block I live in. When people come across that bridge and down A Street, one of the first things they see is those 3 old houses that have been there forever. My house was built in 1910. And when I first bought that house, I talked to Robert Bell. And I asked him, because I was concerned about that mess going in across the street from me. Those 2 ugly office buildings that everybody told me conformed to the neighborhood. Well, whatever, they're okay. But I asked Robert if my house would ever be for commercial use. And he said, no, Candy, that anyone can come to the Board of Adjustment and request a special exception or go to the Planning Commission for a zoning change. But your house will always be residential. So that's my question to you. What's going to change for me?
Your property is not part of the area that's being rezoned.
It's not?
No.
Well, why am I here?
Because you love your town.
Well, I apologize, and that's good. It just appeared to me on the map that I was going to be included in the commercial use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Since we don't have an updated map, since we just updated the video, we don't have a map going on.
I don't have one tonight.
Okay, I'm gonna try to read this next name, but I can't read it too, but Carolyn Mullen something?
I'll let somebody else. I'd say it wrong.
Well, you signed up to, did you want to pass then, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Dave Puckett?
There we go.
I'm Dave Puckett. I own 6 lots on Main Street. I'm a resident of Jenks. My office sits at 520 East Main on 3 lots. And I own the 3 lots just west of my office. This UDO and zoning change will adversely impact my properties in the following ways. It lowers the value of my lots because of the city's restriction on what I can build or what a potential buyer could build. I am limited to a 2-story brick structure built to the sidewalk with only retail space on the 1st floor. That's all that I was told that I could build. I would not construct this type of building because it would hide my office, as traffic flows from west to east on a one-way street. Therefore, my office would be hidden. It's also absurd to think that you could lease retail space because of the current vacancies of rentable retail space. A lot of vacancies. Businesses are closing because the current brick and mortar structures are not what businesses are going into. To think that the city of Jenks could fill retail space from the tracks to 7th Street is inconceivable. I might also add that the city has not addressed the lack of parking with these structures. It will lower the value of my office because it lowers the number of potential buyers with these restrictions in place. The city is trying to rezone and restrict the use of property from 4th Street to 7th Street. There is only 20% of the property in this area that could potentially be used for their new ideas. This is the vacant land and the dilapidated structures that could change. 80% of the structures would not change for several decades because these structures are in excellent shape. Now, somebody could come in and purchase those properties, but they probably wouldn't purchase those properties at today's values. They would purchase them at a fire sale value because we have no other use for that property. Please vote no on this proposal and keep the current zoning and restrictions in place. This would allow a property owner or a developer to come to the city with ideas. And these ideas might even be better than the one-size-fits-all that the city is trying to do. Why not expand what we do? And actually, in that case, we would grow businesses. Right now, I think this is going to impact it on
on a situation to where it would not expand at all. I think you're going to restrict it. Please, vote, no on this. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Wayne Parker.
Good evening.
Good evening. Name and address, please.
My name is Wayne Parker. I live at 132 West 120th Place South in Jenks. I've lived there since 1982. I graduated from Jenks High School in 1966. My family came here in 1925. In fact, my grandfather established a feed store in 1925 at First and Main on the southeast corner. After World War II, my uncle owned the Texaco station until he sold it to Mr. Colston for a flower shop on the catty corner at First and Main. My other uncle Henry operated 2 drugstores back in the 50s here. We had a business representing manufacturers representatives on B Street. I am a former mayor of Jenks, Oklahoma. I was on the council from 1980 till 85 and mayor from 1981 until 1985. I understand your job. I understand the council's jobs. I have history in Jenks. I am very progressive for the growth in Jenks. In fact, that was one of the problems I thought in the 80s, that we were stagnating on a lot of things. In fact, the building you're sitting in was designed and constructed under my administration. My name's on the cornerstone on the front. I only say that to let you know my expertise here in Jenks. The reason I wish to speak is I am opposed to the overlay ordinance that is being proposed. This is going to financially hurt the landowners and all development on Main Street on vacant lots, and potentially properties that want to be sold. The city was dealt a hand in 1903 when the original town site was platted. We have to play that hand that we were dealt. Are you interrupting me?
Just letting you know, sir.
You're running out of time.
I just wanted to let you know. I was not
The
typing.
government needs to do, can I have 15 more seconds?
Yes.
Thank you. Government needs to do the business of government. It's not a development entity. You need to do police, fire, water, safety, just like the other gentleman said. 80% of the revenue of Jenks is developed by sales tax. If you lose the retail business, you won't have money to pay for the services for the citizens of Jenks. Ad valorem taxes that you all pay that I have heard, I was sitting in your seat, people come up, I pay my taxes. $11 and 47 cents or 8.8% of your ad valorem taxes out of $130.22 per thousand goes to the city, to their sinking fund. It's not very much money what runs this city. This is nothing more than an appearance review ordinance to establish an appearance pushed by people who have no financial interest in the property on Main Street that's going to affect business owners and property owners that have a financial interest.
Sorry, but your time is.
Okay, I ask you if you thought enough about people who have no financial interest, but want a look. They want a blue house, they want a red house, they want a brick house, they want Victorian, they want federal architecture. Delta hand, this is the wrong thing. You can
Mr.
do
Parker, your
things.
time is up.
I understand you can do things to encourage these business owners, not mandate them. And that's all the
Willis.
Scott Willis, Cecil's Tire and Automotive, 612 East Main. We just celebrated our 36th anniversary, March the 1st. We've been paying taxes for 432 months. Okay. We're a community leader. Everyone in this community knows that Cecil comes to Cecil for respect, to be taken care of. We give Teacher of the Year of Jenks High School 3 set of tires. I don't know of any other businesses in the community that does that for District Teacher of the Year. We're giving tires to that. Jenks Police, Fire, EMT, all trained at Cecil's. I'm in the process of buying a business beside Cecil's on the left side. Sam Alton owns it. Under the UDO, the new proposed UDO, I want to tear down Cecil's, make it a new Cecil's where it's ADA, everything's done, and make it 10 bays, 5 on the front, 5 on the back, and some more retail shops. I don't want to bring it to the front. I asked Marsh Sage I would be allowed underneath the new UDO, and it will not be allowed. So I'm about to squash a $500,000 deal with Sam Alton to buy his property because I can't expand my business that's been here for 36 years. All we want to do is come to work and do our job and provide great service for everybody, y'all come to Cecil's. And we've been here for 36 years for a reason. Because we do that. Being grandfathered in. What happens if a storm comes and wipes me off the face of the earth? Am I allowed to rebuild Cecil's after the UDO passes? Or is my business over? Because it's $1 million business that I bought last year. And I own another $1 million piece of property in this thing. And you want to talk about developers? I've got $2 million already invested in the city in a year. And now they want to run me out? I'm trying to continue on the legacy of Cecil's. So my question is, if a storm comes, will I be able to rebuild my business? 2, can I not, talking about the growth of the city, why can I not buy the building and the property beside me and tear it down and make a better building for this community? Because y'all are telling me I can't. She told me I couldn't. So can I grow my business or not? What I want to know is UDO. So what I want to know. And remember, we've been paying taxes in this great community for over 36 years, and we just celebrated our 36-year business here. Okay? Come see us at Cecil's.
Carla Kennedy.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Kennedy. I live at 322 South 6th. That's the end of Beaver Street. I don't have a lot to say, except everyone, reiterates what's on my mind. I will say I'm against the rezoning, reclassifying, whatever you want to call it, with the UDO. I think it will devalue our property. Certainly, some of the things I heard come out of the mouth of our mayor, right now I'm quite angry over that. Saying we don't need or we don't want.
Can you stick to the agenda item, please?
Okay. Yeah. Here's what I can say. I heard him say, and I do believe this is part of the agenda. We don't want to see this on Main Street. We don't want to see that on Main Street. I want to tell you who we are. We are me. We are black people. All of these people that lived in this county. I've lived here probably close to 50 years. My parents came here in 1974. We have roots here. And I live in one of those little shacks he was referring to. And the rezoning of that will devalue my property to bring in what you are wanting to bring in and do to our neighborhood. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I can't read the signature on the next person's name. Hopefully you know who you are. You should want to sign the paper that has the most names on it.
With blue ink,
With blue ink.
the very scribbly.
I have only one more person after this person, so 2 more people to speak. But okay. Then we'll go to Judith Roach. If I got your name right.
You got my name right, yes. Judith Roach, I live at 204 East Comanche. I'm in agreement with everyone here. I wasn't never notified until approximately 3 weeks ago, and now it seems like I'm getting 3 to 4 emails a week from the city of Jenks for no notification or anything. I don't agree with rezoning. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone that has signed up that hasn't spoken, or maybe is this a name? Like to come forward? Come on up, is that your name? Give me your name. See if it matches something here.
My name is Richard Williams. My wife spoke
Okay,
earlier.
that looks like it could have.
My wife spoke earlier. My name is Richard Williams. And we live on agricultural land as it's zoned right now. So you're telling me that if I want to build a new house on that land, I can't do it?
I am not saying that. That is
That's what
not
you
true.
said. You said you cannot expand over, you said. if
No,
you
no,
build a
sir.
house,
We're talking
you
about-
said if there's
Sir?
a house that's 1,200 square feet on that house, you can't build anything larger.
I'm
That's what
talking
you
about property on Main Street.
You
Are
said, you said agricultural land earlier.
Because I was answering an agricultural question. When I answered the rezoning question, it was particularly related to properties on Main Street to A and from Main Street
You need
to
be more
Aquarium.
clear in your. Yeah. Because what
I
you said
apologize.
earlier- what
I
you
didn't
said
mean to cause
earlier and
confusion.
What he's smirking about right now, which I don't know what your name is.
I apologize.
I know about you.
You don't know anything about me.
Excuse me, sir, would you please not make this
I'm not
personal?
making this personal. I'm just saying what she said. We cannot build anything larger than.
Sir, that's not true.
That's what you said. Is that what she said?
That is not what I said.
No, whatever. Okay, that is the last person who signed up to speak. I'll close the floor. And turn it back to Marseille.
Mr. Vincent, do we have Ms. Wells and Mr. Haskell on the line?
Yes,
Okay. At this time, I would like to allow John Haskell and Jackie Wells to respond to any of the comments that they heard during the hearing. And after they have concluded their conversation, if planning commissioners have any questions for them, then you may ask them at that time. And let me ask first, Mr. Haskell and Ms. Wells, were you able to hear most of the comments and concerns from the residents?
Yeah, I think I heard all the comments from the residents, yeah.
Okay, can you turn, let's see if we can adjust your sound a little bit. Jackie, can you confirm so I can hear from you?
Yes, I was able to hear the resident comments.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haskell, can you speak one more time to confirm the volume?
Yeah, how's this?
That's better. Thank you very much. Okay, like I said, if you will respond to whatever questions or comments that you have an answer for or can reflect, and then I will allow the planning commission, Chairman can do whatever he wants, but I would suggest that the planning commission, if they have any questions for you all, that they ask them as well. Thank you.
Sure. So I can make some comments responding to some of the comments that I heard from the public. So first, I'm glad everybody came out tonight. Whenever we work with the city on planning or zoning or whatever, I think it's always beneficial to hear from as many people as possible. So appreciate everybody coming out tonight. A few things real quickly. I think it's my impression that a lot of what was stated as fact is in fact incorrect information. I think there were a lot of anecdotal statements that were carried over, probably from something they heard, but were not necessarily factual. And I'll just talk about some of these right off the bat. First of all, there were a few folks that said detailed economic analysis should be done. No development is being proposed. And when zoning ordinances are amended or updated, economic development assessment or financial impact assessment is not done for zoning ordinances. We work on these all over the country, and I've done it for more than a couple of decades. Detailed economic analysis is not done for zoning ordinances. When a development is proposed, a city should do its due diligence with the developer or the proposer to look at the financial impact of a development. But ordinances across the blanket are not economically assessed because we don't know what development may be proposed. There's an infinite number of things that could be proposed, and you can't do an economic development or impact assessment on an infinite number of variables. So it's not practical. Nor is a health impact assessment done for zoning ordinances. The terminology of public health, safety, and welfare is used for a lot of public documentation. Zoning is no exception. Same thing for subdivision codes. It doesn't mean every time the city goes to do a cul-de-sac redesign, they have to do a health impact on the community. So health impact assessments of air quality or traffic congestion or things like that are not done as part of zoning ordinances. They can be done as an impact of a proposed development, weighed into the determination or evaluation of a proposed development. But community-wide health impact analyses are not done for zoning ordinances because we don't know the variable of what will or may never be developed. So those are not customary practices. In fact, they're not done. There's a lot of people who said that property is going to be valued by half because the city is taking away half of the allowed uses. I would state that that is not an accurate assessment at all. The way the old code and the new code define uses, permitted, special, and or not permitted is different. As opposed to articulating or delineating specific uses, there are group categories, so it's not an apples to apples at all. There are uses that are permitted in the new proposed zoning that are not in the old, and there are some in the old that are not permitted in the new. Most of the stuff is not permitted going forward or is being eliminated from a small area of the downtown are auto-oriented uses for the most part, gas stations, and drive-throughs initially. And after discussions and feedback from some of the residents that already spoke, drive-throughs have been added back in as a special use. So initially we had proposed that they not be permitted, and they been put back in as a special use. One gentleman spoke to the fact that this is a design review, basically, and an appearance or an architectural review. I would beg that it is not. The existing overlay district and ordinance does have design review and appearance review standards and architectural standards. The new code does not. We got rid of it. So the old code had some of what the gentleman referenced. The new code got rid of it. So there were appearance and architectural review in the old overlay, and we did not carry that forward. We didn't want to do that. We didn't think it was the right idea. One gentleman said, and again, I think a lot of people think this, in this characterization of restriction of uses, that ground floor has to be retail and it can only be 2 stories tall. We have not only, we've doubled the height of allowed buildings in the district. So we didn't decrease the height of what you could build, we increased by double. In some cases. So right off the bat, potential for development on some sites is exponentially more than development potential of sites as they exist today. depending on the location of the site. So we increase development potential, not decrease. In terms of ground floor uses, it's not restricted to retail. It includes retail, office, medical office, dental, residential by special use, office by special use. It allows service uses. It allows a whole host of things. It's not just retail. So the fact that we don't expect that no downtown has all retail on the ground floor. Maybe back in the day, but that's been a long time. It doesn't exist. Those markets don't exist. But residential, office, medical, dental, service, retail, or professional, there's a whole host of uses. Even multifamily could be proposed with a special use on the ground floor. So there's a huge variety of market responsive uses that are permissible and special use permitted in the downtown that simply were not before, but they are now. There are some uses that were permitted before that we've taken out, mostly auto-oriented uses. Again, gas stations, auto repairs, facilities, things like that. So those uses we have taken out of the use mix, but we've added a bunch more in. So the premise that a lot of people spoke to was right off the bat, my property is going to be worth substantially less because they're reducing my uses by half. It's not an accurate statement and or assessment. I've not seen anybody's submitted appraisal results showing a decrease in property value or development potential of the property now under the current regulations versus the proposed. I'd welcome a review of that. I do not see, based off the new zoning regulations that we are proposing, there would be a decrease in development potential, market responsiveness, or property value over what is currently permitted with the zoning that's in place now. There are some changes, that's for sure. Otherwise, what's the point of changing the zoning? There are changes, but the blanket statements that were made, I think, are patently incorrect, and I think are premised on probably anecdotal or hearsay conversations or thinking about stuff. But I don't support a lot of those assumptions. There was also someone who stood up and he said he questioned the legality of it. 100% being done or being proposed is legal. Rezoning properties proactively is legal. The constitutionality of zoning was established in 1926 in the Supreme Court case Euclid versus Ambler. It's not novel or new. There is no taking and or partial taking. That's simply not the case. And I would have that discussion with any attorney out there. I'm not an attorney. I know zoning inside and out. I know zoning law inside and out. I know case precedent inside and out. And what's being proposed by Jenks is not illegal, but based on very sound precedent legally and from a planning regulatory standpoint. So again, I understand that change is tough. It is different. It's not the same thing going forward. There are changes, but it is not this draconian wholesale slashing of uses and extensive evaluation of properties. I've not seen any evidence to support that, nor would we support, as a professional consulting and planning firm that does this, something that would so devastatingly harm so many property owners and be not responsive of market conditions or development viability or options. So I understand there are changes that are out there. They may impact different people in different ways. I couldn't hear the recording that the person had of the mayor, and I'm glad that I didn't hear it. Don't really like the fact that people get recorded without knowing they're recorded regardless of law. And I didn't hear what the recording said. In regards to what the recording said, we don't predicate our professional recommendations off of what one person may say, or even a couple people say. If we think it's a sound thing to consider, we propose it. If we don't, we don't. So again, that's just some responses to some things. The discussion about agriculture, I think it was adequately or efficiently addressed by staff. The designation of open space for some of the agricultural areas, it wasn't even just the agricultural areas, it was the floodplain areas. And it's not zoning, it's not on the table. We're not rezoning those. If your family's been farming that area for 100+ years, I hope your family's still farming it for 100+ years. Nothing we're doing this evening or being considered will impact that in any way, shape, or form. So I just want to make sure that that's, that's known. So again, understand it's a lot to consider, but I think a huge percentage of what has been stated is based off of maybe somebody heard, but a lot of that was just patently incorrect. So I can answer specific questions, but I just want information to be as accurate as possible. And people who are passionately speaking to this, and I applaud that they are released armed with accurate information as opposed to hearsay, which may have been provided so as to work them. So I just, I'm here to answer any questions you've got or the Plan Commission has, but a lot of what I heard at the podium, I understand where it came from, but I think most of it was incorrect.
Why don't you
Thank you,
Why
Mr.
don't you
Levine.
give us the studies and prove it, so just tell us.
Thank you, Mr. Housel. We appreciate your time.
Can I ask one thing before?
We're going to take a 5-minute break here for a second, okay? Just everybody sit back. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
He asked about questions that he may answer. I have questions.
Taking a 5-minute break.
I think the count point of order, the,
I'm sorry, we're taking a 5-minute break. I'm sorry. I didn't have the microphone on.
as a point of order in an open meeting,
Second.
John Brown? Yes. Scott West?
Yes.
Dan Davis?
Yes.
Dave Randolph?
Yes.
Jerry Bear?
Yes.
Chairman?
Yes. to order now. If everybody would have a seat, please.
I had to tell you why.
Call the meeting back to order. At this point, after we've heard from council, sorry, we're going to turn it over and open it to the planning commissioners for any questions they may have.
Madam Chair, if I can, there's one more thing I didn't address on my hit list that I would like to, and I should.
Okay.
At the open house, I think it was, there was a discussion about the process of the comprehensive plan. And in explaining the comprehensive plan and sort of the homework that was done as part of that year-long plus process. I talked about an assessment of existing conditions and everything we did for that. And then I stated that the assessment of existing conditions is put into a report called an existing conditions report, and that's on file with the city. And in looking back, that report was not separate as a separate document on file with the city. That information that was conducted was actually in chapter 2 of the plan itself. So if you look at the comprehensive plan, you can see the results of that work that was done, but it was not kept in a separate document. It was actually in the comprehensive plan. So if you look at chapter 2 of that document, community profile is that chapter. It goes over an analysis of existing land use, all the different districts, existing and current zoning, demographic and market overview, population trends, population projections, age distribution, race and ethnicity, income, labor force and employment, inflow and outflow of population and employment, demographic takeaways, market overview and analysis for office, residential uses, retail uses, market takeaways for those sectors, housing and market overview and analysis for the aging of housing units, housing affordability, housing takeaways. And so all that text, the key takeaways, the charge tables and analysis that I said were in a separate document are actually in the comprehensive plan. And that is all contained in chapter 2 of the comprehensive plan, as opposed to a standalone document called an ECR. So I misspoke when I said it was a standalone document. Some communities, we do standalone documents. My recollection is it was a standalone document for Jenks, but it was not. It was actually encapsulated as its own chapter 2 of the comprehensive plan. So it was part of the public hearing process. It was made public, made available to the public. Is actually an official part of the comprehensive plan and is available on the city's website. So I apologize. It was not a separate document. It was actually part of the comprehensive plan document. So just wanted to clarify that as it was brought up by one of the speakers. So.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
I've got two things I would appreciate. First of all, thank you everyone coming to speak. Everyone's got family, jobs and everything. So thank you. I know we want to hear. John, could you address two things? One, the process through which this all got started since 2019 for both phases of the comprehensive plan and video. And the second, maybe you want to start with the second one first, is kind of addressing the opt-out possibility of the zoning and your views on having it be optional or opt-in or opt-out.
Sure. There's a lot there. I'll talk through the comprehensive plan process. And while I'm familiar with the zoning process and could go through that, I'll let Jackie speak to the zoning process as she was the project manager for the zoning portion. So it was really a two-part process. The first part was the comprehensive plan. And it is customary and very common the case when a city undertakes a comprehensive plan, it will often at the same time commission both the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance, or UDO, Unified Development Ordinance, or UDC, Unified Development Code, or they do them as projects one right after the other. And the reason being the comprehensive plan is a year-long plus public process with interviews, focus groups, visioning workshops, community workshop, public hearing, open house, et cetera, over the course of a year. A lot of public input, both face-to-face, large group, one-on-one, small group, workshops with the business community, workshops with residents. And over the course of that process, the comprehensive plan is developed. It's a very public, very transparent, fairly lengthy process. And then once a draft plan is pulled together and all the pieces have been vetted, that draft plan then goes through an open house and public hearing process with the plan commission and city council. So throughout all of that, the comprehensive plan gets established. The best way to think of a comprehensive plan is it's a foundation for decision making. A comprehensive plan is not zoning, and zoning is not planning. All right. Zoning is a tool through which cities can begin to implement planning recommendations, development, land use, things like that. The comprehensive plan is the document that sort of establishes the policy guide, the playbook, if you will, the blueprint that the city will use on a whole host of things, capital improvement planning, open space planning. And one of the things it uses is to help go out and get grants and funding. But one of the key recommendations or things a comprehensive plan is used for is to inform amendments to the zoning ordinance. All right. So the policy work, the community work, the leg work, a lot of that is done with the comprehensive plan to set policy, determine land uses, establish preferred character of different areas. That gets adopted. And then the community says, okay, we have this plan. What do we have to do to zoning to begin to deliver this plan we just adopted? Hence the zoning process. So the city then goes through a zoning ordinance rewrite, with one of the objectives being, and the reason the zoning ordinance was undertaken, was to make sure that the regulations dovetail with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. So the zoning ordinance recommendations and the draft zoning ordinance is not arbitrary, it's come out of thin air. We're not thinking of policy on the fly. It is a regulatory structure built on the foundation of the comprehensive plan's land use recommendations. So the public policy, the plan, the public process, the input, extensive over the course of a year to come up with the plan. When the plan is then adopted, the charge then is what zoning do we have to have in place to deliver the plan's outcome. So that's sort of the backdrop for why the comprehensive plan. And before Jackie goes into the zoning process that was undertaken and the outreach and how we did that, the third part of your question was to address what? I can't recall.
The opt-in, opt-out.
Right. I've never, and again, I've worked on zoning ordinances across the country, and I've never seen a zoning ordinance that said there are different approaches to zoning. But I've never seen one that said where once it was all said and done, a property owner could opt in or opt out. I've not seen that happen. I'm not saying it never has. I've not heard of it. I've not seen it. When a zoning ordinance is proposed and a zoning map is proposed, every state has requirements that property owners be notified, a public hearing be heard, and you rezone it. The legality and constitutionality of rezoning is firmly established. If the city could never, ever change anybody's zoning, cities would be whatever they were zoned 100 years ago or 50 years ago, and you could never change it. That's not the case. And that's why I made special note to address the woman who spoke about her farmland and agriculture when she said the city was rezoning her farm to a park or open space. If I were to come, or the city was to come into downtown and take a couple of businesses and say, we're zoning your businesses to a park, all right? That is a taking. A lot of people use the word taking, and that's a legal term, and taking is not happening with this proposal. If we were to come in and zone somebody's private property as a park, we have denied them reasonable use or any use of their property. We're saying it's open space. It has to be a park. You can't, you've got a house on it, you've got a building on it, doesn't matter. We're forcing you to just leave your property vacant. Well, you can't do that. That's denying them use of their property, and you have to pay them for that. Now, if you change the zoning and someone says, well, before I used to be able to do A, B, and C, and now I can only do X, Y, and Z, so it's different, therefore it's a taking. That's not a taking. And communities can change zoning. So it may change what you can or cannot do on your property. But to zone somebody's property as a park is denying them use of their property, and you can't do that. You can change the use of their property. You can't deny them use of their property. So that's why I wanted to be real careful. So I've not seen the opt-in, opt-out before. I've never even heard anybody sort of recommend the idea of I want in, well, I want out, and do it, hodgepodge like that. That could create a series of spot zoning that just didn't make any sense at all. And so I'm not either you do it or you don't. But I'm not sort of a parcel by parcel opt-in, opt-out. So, and then with that, what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Jackie to walk through what the zoning ordinance or UDC process was. So Jackie.
Thanks, John. So after the comprehensive plan was adopted, we moved into the UDO update stage of the project. So at the very beginning of the process, we formed a UDO advisory committee with representatives from local business owners, attorneys, developers, residents, other folks who have experience utilizing Jenks' current regulations. So then after that, we got into the diagnostic phase of the project, where we took a really deep dive into your current regulations and drafted all of our recommendations for how things could be updated moving forward. That was presented to the advisory committee, refined with their feedback, and then presented to this group here, to the Planning Commission, in a public meeting. And then we got into the drafting of code sections. All of those code sections were brought to the advisory committee as well as to the Planning Commission in a public meeting. So there was ample opportunity for the public to get involved and provide feedback in that iterative development process. And then the stage that we are at currently is pulling together all of the draft sections, refining them with additional public input, additional input from the advisory committee through a series of open houses that were held. There was, I believe, 2 in-person open houses that were held back in November, and then a series of in-person open houses for you, but we joined virtually in February. And then we are again here this evening for this second public hearing for the UDO.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners? If not, do I hear a motion to adopt the UDO plan?
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry.
Can we say a couple of things before?
You said
Sorry,
at the first of the
floor, I
meeting,
closed the floor.
well, that's great. You said you would allow us to ask questions.
FinCog did the opt-in and opt-out, okay?
In fact,
None of the affected property owners were in any of those meetings. None of them did anything. So everything that they're saying on there, they did all this, but nobody was involved. Do you honestly think, you can throw me out if you want to. Do you honestly?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
No, listen, do
The
you
floor
honestly?
is full.
I know. I'm talking to these guys. Do you honestly think if you
sorry.
had told any one of these people that you were rezoning our property that we would not have showed up?
from the beginning.
Yes, we would have shown up. Every one of us would have been there, regardless of what we had to do.
Into the comprehensive plan, nobody knew about it during a pandemic.
The floor is closed.
I don't
Sorry.
care if
We've
the
already
floor
gone
is
through that.
closed. This is ridiculous. Ma'am,
At this
the
point,
gentleman
we
that
we
spoke
finished this
on there,
agenda.
Please, you know better than that.
At this point, this
Excuse me, he said on the video that he would take questions and explain things. If you want to be heavy-handed about that, go
The
ahead.
questions
The
come
whole
from the
thing,
planning
I
commission.
have one question.
Please, you're out of order and I don't appreciate the disrespect.
You don't either.
I gave you the information on how the meeting is gonna go. We followed from the procedure.
Now, you said there would be allowed questions. I'll ask you a question. At the first of the meeting, you said
You are allowed 3 minutes to give us your view and ask
And
questions at that time.
we would be allowed questions after the presentation.
Why would you not want to hear from the affected property owner?
If we can't ask a clarification.
I think you all had your time to be able to say what you felt. And what your questions were. We gave you the opportunity.
And you don't care, that's pretty obvious.
No, like, we all care.
I have a rebuttal of what he said. He said that this is not an appearance review. Is it right or not that it's going to be required to have a 2-story building in this district up to the sidewalk? Is that true or not? Is that true?
Madam Chair, are you entertaining additional questions or is the floor closed?
You won't answer a simple question?
The question has been answered before. I believe that I say
I'm
addressed
sorry,
that
I didn't
earlier in
hear.
the meeting. The floor is now closed. I will not take any more questions or comments from people in the audience. We're going to move on to our other business. At which point, the order of business that we have, may I hear a motion to approve items 1A through E as presented in staff on our agenda?
I am also available.
May I hear a motion to approve items 1A through 1E as presented by staff? Commissioners, do I hear a motion?
I think it's clear by the way you handled this, that you have kept this quiet from us. And now that we're here, finding out about.
You know,
I didn't hear a motion.
Yeah. These guys, they're professionals. Please.
Yeah, make motion to approve consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Tom Brown?
Yes.
Scott West?
Yes.
Dan Davis?
Yes.
Dave Randolph?
Yes.
David Meyer?
Yes.
Chairman?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is JZ 22 PUD 132.MA1. Request by Ryan Mccarty to establish a new boundary, rezone a new parcel, and add the PUD overlay for office, warehouse, and other uses. The general location is north of 121st between Elwood and Elm. Say.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This item is, came before you back in December. Yes, December. This is 2022. There should be a correction on page 286 of 344. This was ordinance number 1572. It was approved December 21st, 2021. And this is a new amendment to this PUD 132. It's part of South County Crossing 2. It is a proposed, if you'll remember back, this is.
I ask the audience to be quiet, please. We're having a meeting.
Thank you.
Sure. This is part of PUD 132. It's a major amendment. We're reestablishing the boundaries of PUD 132. Mr. Jordan is represented tonight by Mr. Mccarty. The piece in question is a triangular portion that's adjacent to 121st Street. The project in general is located north of 121st Street, and this is the large piece that is north of the fire station. And you can see it on the as Exhibit A. And you see right down there, kind of in the middle of the screen where the yellow writing is that triangular piece. At the time PUD 132 was approved, it was also noted that you have to plat. And so instead of going through a lot split process and then coming back with the plat, all of this will be platted as one development. So if you look on page 287, it talks about the uses that were allowed in the current code versus the new UDO. And it's, as already stated, it is not apples to apples. The way that it's worded currently and the way that it will be worded in the new UDO is very different. So I kind of tried to lay it out. It just makes it really challenging. For instance, use unit 10 is not a new use unit in the new UDO. And use unit 11, which was called office and studio, is now called office, professional office. I'm on page 287 of your entire packet. Convenience goods and services would be, based on what they had asked for, would be general retail service, general services, brewery, etc. And then other trades and services. In this case, they were approved for self-storage, and this would, so in the new UDO, it's called self-storage. So it's not apples to apples. It gets very confusing when you're trying to explain it. It's not a matter of losing a ton of uses. It's just a matter of renaming them and applying them. If you look at development area B, 57% is dedicated in the entire PUD. 5.7% of the development is dedicated as RV storage. All of these percentages change just a little bit. The comprehensive plan map has not been updated. There was a map amendment to call this business park. and we went through that process at that time. The PUD 132 MA1 is a request to rezone a small triangular piece of property identified as C.3 adjacent to 121st Street. The majority of this project sits back from 121st Street, about 450 feet. Approving this request would allow the owner to develop the small C.3 area similarly to the approved PUD according to the established standards. So as you know, a PUD is a planned unit development, and planned unit developments come with their own zoning code. The staff recommends conditional approval with plating being a requirement. It doesn't provide staff with a clean copy, which I have received, and adhere to any future engineering and planning requirements, and adhere to all building code and fire code requirements. Then on page 291 starts the actual amendment language. You can see on page 293 where the acreage is changed and the legal description is added. And then they've updated the exhibit on page 295. For some reason, Exhibit C did not print, so I need to make a note of that. Oh, no, I actually think it's on the next page. So the site plan, yes. The site plan is actually seen on the next page. I don't know why I printed that way. So you have Churchill Park on the north and on the west, and you have South Creek on the east. Exhibit D is the existing zoning map. And you can see that this is previously agriculture, and now it's rezoned to OM, CG, and I think there's something else, and with the PUD overlay. So Exhibit F shows the accurate comprehensive plan amendment. There will be no reason to amend the lower portion. And then you have the building concepts for the new therapy clinic. Then it shows the vehicular access. The applicant has worked really closely with staff to get this approved. I think there's been at least 3 or 4 different renditions of what is allowed for the site plan and circulation. On page 306, we have the development area summary. Excluded uses are sexually oriented businesses and medical marijuana. That is the case in all of them, and that was one of the things that was part of the original approval, so that's been added and corrected in here. It shows on page 310 the different setbacks, building setbacks, development area D. If you remember, we couldn't come up with a name for what you would call the garages. So if I had a she shed and you had a man cave, what do we call those? And I think the text language is settled on private garages, because also, if you remember, this is an industrial property that cannot be habitable. No one can live there. Not now, not ever. Can't stay there because of the deed restrictions. It has nothing to do with the actual act. So if everything is approved and moves forward and the whole world doesn't tank between now and then, it's anticipated that the construction will commence within 6 months. So do you have any questions? The applicant is present if you would like to ask some questions.
First, I'll ask the commissioners, do you have any questions on this? The applicant would like to come forward and give us your name and address. If there's something you want to say about it.
Brian Mccarty is select design field on site board 8 Oklahoma. I think I'll say did a great job. As she said, we were going to do a lot of split off this storage facility, emergency storage facility, sub bag, and just wanted to get all that done. It seems cleaner before we call it flat for South County 2. I was in the PD, get this piece in there, then bring the flat in. So it takes care of it. 2 residents.
Anyone have any questions for Ryan? Okay, so thank you, Ryan. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on behalf of this agenda item? Welcome to come forward. Give me your name and address. I'll close the floor. I hear a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the UD 132 conditional on the notes there.
Second.
John Brown. Yes. Scott West.
Yes.
Dan Davis.
Yes.
Dave Randolph. Yes. David Meyer.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes. This item on the agenda is JZ 22 PUD 134. Request by J.R. Donaldson for a plan unit development and a rezone from an RS2 residential single family to an RM2, which is a residential multifamily to allow for townhomes. The general location is at 504 East C Street. Marcy?
Madam Chairman, thank you for that. This is PUD 134 request, and this is a similar project that was approved maybe a couple of months ago. The applicant has submitted a request to rezone from RS2, which is residential single family, to RM2, which is residential multifamily, in the addition of a restricted plan unit development. So at the time this report was written, I believe 2 people had called and they were inquiries that were very generalized. There was no specific conversation that I am aware of. Like there wasn't any note of, please note that I'm opposed to this. On page 325 of 344, it shows the zoning map, and if it were an RS2, what the bulk and area requirements would look like, what they are for for the PUD 134, what it would look like if it was RTH straight zoning or RM2 straight zoning. And I did a lot of math on this, so not my favorite thing. There's a picture down at the bottom that shows the actual parcel in question. If you look on page 326, this is shows the comprehensive plan, the land use map, and then we have a Google shot that shows you what's around it. And you see that there's multiple different apartment complexes as well as single family, and there's even a couple of commercial uses that are fairly close by. Probably office uses that we don't even know about. The page 327, it shows the lot. There's a Google photo. The original structure has been removed, and this would be the Google Maps on the very bottom is if you are driving south on 5th Street, that's the southeast corner with the arrow on it. The next one is looking north, so the lot in question would be on my right. The PUD 134 is a request to rezone from RM3 residential multifamily and place restrictive zoning over the entire area. The project is similar in design to 523 Brownstone Apartments. Approving this request would allow the owner to develop the entire area as townhomes. Staff believes this PUD has provided a unified development treatment for the development track, and approval is a waiver of some bulk and area requirements as currently presented in the code. Staff recommends conditional approval. Replatting is required. Utility easements may not be adequate. So when we get to the platting phase, it'll go before the technical advisory committee. And at that time, they will make comments and let you know if they can get all of their utilities within the areas dedicated. Sidewalks are required along all streets, and the plat must be filed before a building permit is issued. We are a statutory city, and that is a requirement of the city of Jenks. Alley will be improved to city specifications. The to add 134 to the base of the plat to the base of the PUD, and on page 1 add comprehensive plan language, adhere to engineering and planning requirements, adhere to all building and fire code, and confirm setback for C Street and other setbacks. I think that I figured it all out, but if you'll take a look at that, Mr. Donaldson. And then page 329 starts the actual document for the PUD. I tried to highlight on page 332 some of the details that have been provided. You see C Street is on the north, and you have 5th Street on the west, and the alley on the south of the property. There is parallel parking adjacent to 5th Street. And that was part of our conversation previously, and part of what council has suggested, and I believe Planning Commission first suggested that due to the traffic impacts and the potential issues, that it's better if you can just pull straight into a parallel. I think there was lots of conversation at council about who can and cannot parallel park. But so the young people laugh because they actually have cars to park themselves. It's just me that's struggling with parallel parking. This is part of the original town Jenks, and that's kind of highlighted on page 334. On page 335, there's a little bit of a preliminary plat there for you. You can kind of see. Then we have the
Drainage.
Yeah, we'll call it that. You see the drainage. So there's an illustration on that's called Exhibit 8 that shows what they would look like. And then the same chart that I provided is in the PUD. And that is pretty much it. So if you have any questions for me, I will do my best to answer them. If not, Mr. Donaldson is here representing the applicant and will be happy to answer your questions.
Questions from the commissioners?
Couple of things that came up ready for this one, and there's more probably more scrivener's errors than anything else. There was some discrepancy between the classifications off with the staff commentary, and then
the RS2.
yes, it went
I saw that.
to RM2, and then on page 5 of 5 we had is in RM3, and then in submission on page 341, RS3, let's see, proposed zoning is RM2, property RS3. So just a clarification, what the current zoning actually is.
Look it up. I believe it's RS3, but let me check. I saw that too. I was like, what? That is not. Not popping up.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
I noticed that it was not correct. Is that currently RS3? There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I was pretty sure that's what it was. Sorry, I did see that too when I was reading it
That's fine. I
today.
just wanted to be clear because
Yes.
didn't know which one was correct. A couple of other things that I noticed on this. By the way, thankful for the language in the proposed UDO because it clarified facing very well. Since it was the end of the street or lot, I did have a question about the units that will be on the south side, opening up to the alley. Didn't see that necessarily addressed. Is there two front sides to this building since it's going to be townhomes? Clearly the facing the north would be the front facing of the building, but again, if the entrance is to the units on the south, that was just kind of a question whether
That would be the front for anyone that lives on the southern
On
portion.
the southern
Yeah,
portion.
you would face the parking area.
Yeah, I was looking at that. I didn't see on any of the drawings, saw the width of the units from east and west, and did not see anything showing total square footage on how. So I was looking for total square footage for each unit. And this is kind of a general philosophical question as to, I realize we can't classify RTH until everything's codified by the city council. Is there a reason why was there an advantage to try to pass it now versus waiting until UDO is in place with the RTH on the new zone, the new classification?
I think that they started their financing process and they're already under the gun for their deadline. And even though it is my plan to take the UDO to council in April, things can change. So
Yeah, and thank you for putting the comparisons in here, because since we started this process, we've been going back and forth between the existing code to the proposed to see the impact, whether it's positive, neutral, or adverse. So thank you for doing that. That was all I had.
Okay. Anyone else? Does the applicant wish to come forward? Give us your name and address.
I'm Chairman, my name is Jared Donaldson, 12820 South Drive, Bixby. I do represent the owner of this property. This garden is on C Street. To answer a couple of questions, these units, all 6 of them will be identical. They are 825 square feet per floor, so a total of 1,650 square feet for each 2-bedroom units. And so they are the same units that we're building down the street at Pitt. And so it's the same footprint. So they were able to buy this property to do these 6 units. So and to answer what Marseille stated, if you park in the alley, the front of that place is the same as C Street. They're identical. We think it's going to be a good product for the city. The owners excited about it. They're tweaking the floor plan design right now so that they can get the project there on Fifth going. Something we're moving along with as well. But I'd be happy to answer your questions that you have if you want to do this.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Johnson?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, conceptually, when SALT's proposed, I was thinking, is that lot going to be
Big enough? That's what I thought.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, the house that was there before was actually facing this street.
Yes.
And there was no place for parking. You know, said all the parking on the grass.
Yeah.
Between the house.
And one thing to let you know, on these units, they're, like I said, they're 1,650 square feet and they're sprinkled. So it's going to be a nice unit.
So there was no comment from the house to the east then?
maybe someone in the.
We have someone in the audience. So.
Oh, and there's be a privacy fence between our property and there's privacy fence. The sanitary sewer is in the alley. Meeting with staff, we do have to bring the alley up so that the paving standard is 75,000 pounds per fire truck. So that has to take place. Where we're parking off of Fifth Street is where we put storm sewer there, so we can do and that water line is on C Street and yeah. So utilities already do that.
Great.
Thank you very much.
You. In the audience coming forward would like to speak on this agenda item, please come forward. I believe now it's your turn, Jim.
Hello, Karen Fioria, 713 East E Ave, Jenks. I just have concerns regarding traffic in that area. I know you touched on it a little bit. It's kind of like you put the blueprint and then the people around it going to build it. And they're going to stop laughing when they see how it goes down. But I've lived back there for 7 years. When I first moved here in 2014, there was that one house on the corner. So if you're heading west on 5th, It's on your left-hand side here. There was one small house in a red minivan. This occupant parked their van in the worst possible place. You could not see around. I know for a fact there was complaints. I had neighbors told me they complained about this one person parking there. I know my son complained because he almost got run over trying to pull out there one day. So I imagine it's known that this area is a little bit tricky. In addition to that, directly across the street is the school bus stop. It picks up elementary, intermediate, and middle school students, not to mention the high school is right there. There are already no sidewalks on the east side of Fifth. So if you're looking at 6 units, you've got to figure that households have 2 cars now, 2 cars each at least. So you're gonna have 12 additional cars parked right on that corner. Now, if one car can create so much havoc that people can't even pull out, what are 12 more cars gonna do? Plus, what happens when they have company? What happens when your brother-in-law shows up and he drives that crappy car, now he's sleeping on your couch and he never leaves, now you've got a junker sitting on the side of the road on top of it. So I just, in addition to that, the unit that was one block up on that intersection, did any of y'all ever go by that during school hours when school's going in or out and see the insanity? And now you're gonna, I don't even know how many units are on the other corner. I only wish I stood up and spoke my mind back then. It's so many cars. And I'm not one to say, you can't do this with your land. Go ahead, build, great. I'm a realtor, there's nothing for sale. I'll list it all for you. I just think sometimes, maybe it's just too many. Everything I wanted to say. That's it, it's just all the additional cars, the fact that there's already no sidewalks, you've got a bunch of kids there, and where you're saying you want to park on C, correct? So your parking would not be on Fifth, it would be on C, or did I get that wrong?
It's on Fifth.
Oh, it's on Fifth, okay.
Parallel on Fifth.
Okay, because I know when school gets out too, none of the kids walk anymore. So all the parents are parked on both sides of the road to pick up their kids when they get off the bus. So the bus traffic, school traffic, parent traffic, now you're gonna have townhouse traffic, I don't know. It's a lot of cars for a very small amount of area. I actually wanted to count how many houses were on the east side of the street for an indication of how many possible children live on that side and are gonna need to cross Fifth Street every day just to get to that bus stop, every morning, every afternoon. And I guess that's all. Just traffic and too much activity and not enough room for the kids.
Christine?
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll close the floor. Back to the commissioners. Any other questions, comments?
Commissioner West, you go first.
I was just going to point out that we will get a sidewalk at least have Fifth out of this. That's one benefit.
Very true.
As far as parking, thanks for bringing this up, but there are minimum parking requirements, and I'm not the parking guru, but this complies with those. I take it, right?
I would have to confirm that, and I apologize. For some reason, I thought they were 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom. I'm not sure they comply with the parking ratio. I'd have to look at that.
Okay,
I know 2-bedroom is 2.
The parking is whatever the rule is. If it meets it, it meets it. If not, it doesn't. I mean, not every area is exactly the same. But that's kind of my thought, is we have to stick to our sort of parking rates.
Right.
That would make sense, we could.
And to kind of respond there, we were with these particular units, 1,600 square foot units, have 2 parking spaces per unit. Now, with regards to that, being, I call it 3 bedrooms, they're designing, I say, literally 1 office, 2 bedrooms. So, I mean, and then what we talked about earlier down the street, because I know that City Council wanted to make sure that we had 2 parking spaces per unit on the previous one, and that's what they've asked us to do. Here's 2 parking spaces per unit. So that's what we meant, 12 parking spaces, 7 in the.
So they're
alley.
not 3-bedroom units.
They have 3, but just like if you're gonna build a home, and you designate one as an office area, and then do that every time, because it's rental. In that, that kind of gets me.
Anything else? In your motion?
And just a quick comment, I know we talked about this before, I'm not in love with parallel parking or off-street parking when it's like that. And in this street, the traffic there during school time is bad, especially when the buses come through. We might want to find out if we can have west side designated as no parking. Just to make sure that nothing happens along that side, and then have a question as to whether or not the C Street north to the north, and make sure that there's no parking happening. We have to put some signage there.
Are you talking, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Can you clarify?
Yeah, again, just a question to make sure that the areas around it are going to be designated as no parking. We've got the parallel parking off of the. I know we've got the alley that is to the south. That alley doesn't actually go through.
We talked about that as a development team, and that was a decision that was made during council. They asked the other apartments to block the alley, and fire wants it open. So that's a discussion that we're going to have with that. Is it 523 ground?
Yeah, I think there's actually, again, on this one, I think there's some type of utility building at the end of the alley.
Let's look at it this morning. Let me look at it again.
Schools probably.
Oh, going that direction. Oh dear.
I think there's a gate down here.
It's 523. Yeah, that was, and okay, let me. I think I tasked myself to talk to them about that, and I have not done that. And so that was something that was discussed in the conversation in the pre-development meeting. And so I will follow up on that. Also, I did confirm in the code, it's 2 spaces per unit after 2 bedrooms. It doesn't change, it doesn't move up. So they have met the parking requirement. That's technically 2 bedrooms with a bonus space, which can be your.
Now you're waiting for a motion.
Yes, I hear a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve JZ 21B 134. Along with any stated recommendation.
Second.
John Brown?
Yes.
Scott West?
Yes.
Jan Davis?
Yes.
Steve Randolph?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Chairman?
Yes.
Very much.
Any planning updates?
Thank you all for being here this evening. I'll try to provide snacks moving forward at all of our hearings, whether they are short or long. We will try to have something for you to munch on just in case you have to rush here. I know that it's a tremendous challenge sometimes to get here at the appropriate time. And in regards to the UDO, thank you all for your patience and for listening to all of the concerns of the citizens. I know, having served with you all for 2 years, that it is very, very important to hear from the public. I know it means everything to you all to give them the opportunity to speak. And I really appreciate all of you. Tonight was a little bit challenging, but I appreciate your patience with me and with House Levine and with any residents. Thank you very much. UDO is not approved yet. It is I sent you all an email kind of outlining what's been done to date. I won't go through it. You all have seen it. You know what we've done. We've had, there was a public notice that went out for the record. I feel like I've told you all that before. There are people that were in the audience tonight that received that public notice, so it is confirmed. I have noticed at least one notice that was returned to us from that mailing, so I do know that they went out. We cannot control whether or not things are delivered. We can only control if they are mailed.
Or read.
Or read, yeah. And,
Very true.
yeah.
Three things for the record, I can throw these out, and again, just, it's not necessarily the record here, but, you know, there's so much misinformation, so many things that were said in that were not only inaccurate and inappropriate, that needed to be addressed, but that elevation of the emotion in the crowd was such that it could not be done effectively. It would further to chaos. So thank you, Carol, for moving this along. That's hard to fight our time.
That was probably
And
one of the more
thank you.
challenging meetings I've
Thank
ever
you,
done.
Commissioner West, for making notice to our public servants. I think one of the things we need to recommend to the council that we have officers present to try to maintain the council meeting.
Yeah, they said, please let us know.
Yeah.
When it's on council.
Yeah. Second thing for the record, somehow addressing the things that, and I made notes, but addressing the misinformation, I think is important. I'm not sure how we can do that. But I think it should be noted what was communicated that is misinformation publicly, because the meeting itself will be a matter of public record what was said. So I think those things have to be cleared up for the record. And then final thing is just a recommendation to the city. You've been very patient, transparent, and very professional on this, and mischaracterized publicly. And I just urge you to stay the course, and thank you for all your work on this.
Yeah, thank you. You're strongly.
I special emphasis on snack pizza.
We've never had snacks before.
Got it.
Motion to adjourn. You don't have to put your microphone on.